Okay, this next thing, or next item is about words that you should not be using when you're writing your lit review. So this is a list of 10 words to avoid when writing. And most of this you probably have been able to avoid to this point, but we just want to be sure. So for example, really, avoiding this word is a really great idea. A really great idea is the same as a great idea. That doesn't add any emphasis to that. It's it's redundant. And I think the reason that people do that, there's a word that we're not supposed to use, is they use it as a filler. And they do that because they're used to doing that when they're speaking. And when you're speaking, the reason you put things like that in there, or for example, when people say when they begin a sentence, is because their brain is still processing exactly what it is that they want to say. We're not doing that here. You have plenty of time for your brain to figure out what you need to be writing. I went over that in the last video. Obviously, we're not using any kind of personalization as that. Feel and think. I feel the government should stop people from writing poorly. Or I think the government should stop people from writing poorly. Well, I do too, but we are not going to feel anything about what we're doing in the class, and we're going to think, but we're going to think about where can I find the evidence to support what it is that I want to say or refute what somebody might say. That's the only time you should think or feel. First of all, feeling shouldn't be coming into this. That is if you want feeling, go to the counseling program. That's not what we're doing here. We're trying to make decisions based upon what we know, and that replaces what we think. As you write this word, poke out your eyes. It's weak and can cause confusion. Reason is, as you can't do two things at once. So really the way that should be written is write this word, then poke out your eyes. And this part should come out as well, because if you want to include that, it's because it can cause confusion. So the way that should be written is write this word, then poke out your eyes, because it causes confusion. A lot, if you hadn't learned that by the time you got out of high school, it's too late. A lot is a place that you build a house, and that there's no way that should describe anything that you're doing in here. Sort of, kind of, those are colloquial terms that people rely on when they're not exactly sure what they're going to say. Like, just, used to, those are things that just aren't appropriate for research writing. As I've thought, and this is not my list, this came from another guy named David Bowman, and as I've thought about this, I've added two more, done and show. Research was done using 15 subjects. No, what you mean is the research was conducted, performed, or completed. The subjects you referred to participated or completed. This is a weak word that we should not be using. Show. The evidence shows that performance changed. Show sounds definitive. It sounds like we're 100% sure. One of the things that we're going to learn through this process is with hypothesis testing, there's always a chance we could be wrong. So the evidence might suggest, or the evidence might indicate, but there's a chance that what we are talking about isn't true at all. So therefore, we shouldn't use a definitive word like that. But here's some of the words that should not show up in your writing. The other list of words that you'll have are these: weak and wordy sentence openers. There is, there are, there seems to be, there would seem to be, it is necessary that, is interesting to know, an example is, an example of this is, in spite of. These are all word fillers. This is a weak way to start a sentence. This stuff for sure, people really use as a crutch in their writing. That is going to lead you to write a weak sentence, because when you do this, you're not making the subject the subject. So we're going to go through an exercise, and I'll put this into Google Sheets, and I'll give you a discussion thread, or we're not going to use a discussion thread, but I'll give you a notification when I want you to start working on this. These are poorly written sentences. And I went through a workshop with our former English chair, and he explained to me, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, writing well is a very difficult thing to do. This is a backwards sentence. So what we're going to do in this exercise is I want you to rewrite the sentence in an appropriate way so that you make the subject the subject. That's what we mean. What happens is when we write like this, we're writing in the way that we speak. That's poor research writing. We have to make the subject the subject. So our goal in this exercise, and there's 13 of these, is for you and your groups to work on rewriting the sentence. I'm going to make the Google Sheet so everybody can write on the same thing. Is I want you to rewrite these sentences so that the subject is the subject. Subject, verb, action. And I will help, I'll go back through this when you're working on that, see if we can get this turned a different direction. The other issue is passive and active voice. And if you're not real sure about what that means, it's something that you need to research, because it is something that people really struggle with. So here's the difference between these. Here are examples of active voice. Monkeys adore bananas. The cashier counted the money. The dog chased the squirrel. All these sentences have a basic active voice construction: subject, verb, object. That's what we're trying to do with the other exercise about the sentences. We're trying to get this to where it's subject, verb, object. So that's what we're trying to do with passive versus active voice. In a passive voice, it comes out like this: bananas are adored by monkeys. The money was counted by the cashier. The squirrel was chased by the dog. The subject is at the end of the sentence. So we want to change it to where that becomes at the beginning. And this is the primary way by which people speak, and it's the primary way by which people write. And if you're writing using Microsoft Word, it'll catch it, because it always shows this as a blue squiggly line. And if that pops up when you're writing, you really need to fix it. And even now, it's difficult for me to avoid doing this. I'll go ahead and write something. For example, I was working on a dissertation practice handbook, and because I'm thinking and writing at the same time, I default back to this passive voice, and then I'm going to go back and correct it to the active voice. This is something you really need to pay attention to, because it's got to be like this. And that's going to be considered proper grammar for what we're doing in the literature review, and proper grammar for what you're doing in the dissertation practice. And that's why we want to have some time to go through that exercise together to try to avoid this. And it may be, and we can talk about this at one of our Saturday meetings, that we may need to have an opportunity for you to turn in a short first draft of your lit review for this course, because it's so hard to get this to switch, and I don't want you to suffer a substantial negative impact on your grade because of a habit. So we can talk about the need to do that, and see if we can work that into the time frame of when that is due. So be looking for the next exercise, which is this, and it's something pretty simple to do, and that's really is all we need to do for Module 3. Module 3 also is going to involve what we do on that Saturday in terms of trying to narrow on this. So there's not as much to that. And that is it.